podcast. I'm Tim Niemeyer. Today I'm joined by Ben Justman, winemaker. I'm going to be fancy here and say vintner of Peony Lane. Ben, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Tim. Been looking forward to talking to you for a while.
Yeah, man. Ben and I got to meet you in Miami. Ran up to you real quick and like screamed something about pocket steak in your ear. I've been following Ben for a while now, and I just recently purchased a bottle or three of his lovely wine. I'm looking forward to breaking into that coming up for the halving. I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb, Ben, and say you're the best Ben in Bitcoin Twitter. So I'm just going to throw that out there. No pressure. But I wanted to have you on here first, obviously, to tell us about your wine, also to tell us about your Bitcoin journey. But I want to get deeper into some of the crossover. Some of the comparisons between Bitcoin and winemaking, because the more you look at it, the more that there's there. But before we get into any of that, I'm pretty sure that your winemaking journey started way before Bitcoin. This is a family thing, if I'm right.
Yeah, I guess the beginning of the journey started being a kid working out in the vineyard and seeing my dad make wine as part of his hobby. But I started my wine business and winemaking myself about a year before I found Bitcoin. So that and Bitcoin all kind of did come around the same time, especially just because wine is such a long-term process that I, a year in, still was a year out from selling any wine. So it all definitely hit around the same time, besides just growing up in a little bit of a wine world.
Now that's interesting because when I think wine country, I think West Coast, but you're not West Coast. Tell us
hmm
about where you're from.
So I'm in Western Colorado, the West Elks AVA. It's one of two more growing oriented regions for wine in Colorado, and it's the highest wine region in North America. So my vineyard is at 5,680 feet, and there's vines that people have all the way up above 7,000 feet. So what
Wow.
that does is it really brings out some amazing fruit in the wines, but the high altitude also makes the wines this like zipping acidity that makes you like makes makes you thirsty, makes you want more, brings out like the saliva in your mouth. So it really like you take a sip and you just want another one really quickly.
I love that. Gets them hooked. Gets them going.
hmm
I love that. So take me back though. So you said your dad, he was a winemaker and you grew up doing that. What was that like?
My dad built houses his whole life and wanted to retire to a farm. So when I was 8, we moved to Colorado. He bought a farm to grow all his own food and had to cut down a bunch of apple trees and figure out what to plant. So he got convinced to plant Pinot Noir grapes. And wanting to grow all his own food, he decided to make his own wine as well. So he was very much a hobby winemaker, not trained, just went for it. And I swear my dad doesn't have a sense of taste or smell. But the wine he made was really good. And so when I was 24, I was always knew I wanted to start a business, but was like, man, what could I do? And he had all the equipment to get going for a hobby winemaker. I knew I'd have to scale up, but it was kind of sitting there for me as a low-hanging fruit because I thought if my dad figured out how to make good wine, I'm sure I can. So yeah, without any training, expertise, or anything, I just went in and started a winery, committed my life savings, and then did that again the next year, and then did that again the next year, and then finally sold my first bottle of wine.
Man, so I'm just interested. How did you keep yourself afloat during that? Like you had to be, doing two jobs at least, right?
Yeah, so I was always essentially had two jobs for the first 3 years of winemaking. I got a loan from my dad to do it that I'm still paying off, so that was part of the infrastructure to get going. And then I built a house with him, so I'm living in that house right now. And we built that house together for the first year of winemaking. And then I sold, and then what the next, oh, I'm sorry, I got that mixed up. I lived in Denver and was a geologist for the first year of winemaking. The
Oh,
second year
cool.
of winemaking, I was building the house. And then the third year, I had a little bit of wine to sell, and so I sold that during the summer at farmers markets, and then I worked in a restaurant for that winter. Basically, did the same thing the next year, worked in a restaurant, and then have been full time with wine. And kind of the thing was is I just didn't have enough wine to sell because those first few years I was making as much as I could, but the infrastructure was just too low, and then I got to wait 2 years. So it was just kind of hard and a long time to get developing, to let the wine age a proper amount. And now I've finally scaled up and caught up to my production, so I'm able to be full time wine selling a ton.
So what year did you start selling your first? I mean, because you said it was 1 year right after the other with that in Bitcoin. I'm trying to
Mhm.
time this out.
Yeah, so I made wine in 2019 was my first vintage, and then I sold that wine in 2021 for the first time.
Very nice.
And then I found Bitcoin in 2020. So right in between.
There's so many people that I talk to. I was 2018. I was on the way down from the 2017. It leveled out at 6,000. I bought in, and then it crashed to 3,000. I'm like, what the hell is this? But I personally did a bunch of the shit coining and everything in those first couple of years because you didn't know, right? You, like
Hmm.
you said with the winemaking, you're learning on the go. You taught yourself, and
Hmm.
I had to do a lot of teaching myself back then. There was a few things out there, but yeah, by 2020, it just seemed like that's the thing that got everybody or woke up a lot of Bitcoiners. So did I assume it's because of like the effects of like what we did, printing money and everything with COVID. Did that have a big effect on you and your business?
Well, my business didn't really exist before then,
So
so
yeah, because
it was kind of
2021,
a yeah.
yeah,
So there's not really a before and after to compare. Prices definitely went up. I was scared about being able to get bottles in time because the um, all the transportation and ships and everything from China were messed up. But
supply chains
uh,
were just shot. Yeah,
yeah, supply chains. But yeah, ultimately, I don't know. And all I do know is that within Colorado, tourism was crazy for a couple of years because people didn't travel abroad. So that was good for me getting started. And then people traveled abroad last year, so it's brought back down to normal, but it's pretty normalized at this point. Prices have gone up, yeah, but ultimately, when you make wine, the grapes are not a massive cost. I mean, they are in terms of the cost, but the margins are good. So if you make good wine, it's not a huge deal.
that's interesting. So it's funny because like I used to drink a lot of different things, and then I got married, and like my wife and I started getting into wine and went from like white straight to red. Like we didn't, it wasn't
Mhm.
just like a slow over. And we even did a trip out to Napa Valley, like when our kids were just old enough that they could stay home with grandparents. And from then, I hardly drink anything other than wine. And I find it funny now. I don't know if I'm just telling myself this, but like through my Bitcoin journey and health and everything, like you look at a lot of alcohol, you look at a lot of the processed stuff, and it's like I don't want to put any of that other stuff in my body. And it's like with wine, I'm like, hey y'all, are you need a Bitcoin? You looking for a way to safely and securely store your Bitcoin? Check out the Bitcoin Advisors. These Bitcoiners are professionals that will provide you peace of mind so you can sleep soundly at night knowing your Bitcoin is safe. Remember to tell them Zoom Out sent you. So yeah, we make our trip out to Napa Valley. I go full wine. I'm now like that's the only thing I'm gonna ever do is drink wine anymore. And I want to kind of tie that back into Bitcoin in a way. Like I find myself having this like really big low time preference shift, because about that time I started getting more into health and I started thinking about like long term. And I don't know. I know you see that in the wine business, like you mentioned before, the grapes, they take time, they take
Hmm.
effort, they take love and care. Uh, did you ever like pre Bitcoin? I mean, you always saw that with the wine business with your dad, not the business, but just growing and having to take the time. you ever have did you have a big shift in your time preference from pre-Bitcoin, post-Bitcoin?
Definitely. It started kind of before the two things. I had started getting in high school, I started getting a ton of concussions from sports,
Mm.
soccer and skiing mostly. And I got to a point where it was like I was still skiing hard, but I knew like I was still hitting stuff where I was like, if I fall, I'm just going to be concussed for a month and my life's going to get wrecked. And eventually kind of got through my thick skull that I should maybe just not do it, not be doing that. So kind of scaled off of that. And when I was scaling off of taking skiing as seriously as I used to, um, I started the winery. And so that kind of, I was able to channel that maybe angst or energy into building something productive long term. And in building the winery, it was like, it was so challenging. I mean, working two jobs, one of them is your complete life investment that you're not going to see for 2 years. And building a house is very hard as well. So it
Sure.
was really challenging. And I kind of just kept asking questions about things and also learning about Bitcoin and like learning how to think from first principles and go to the root of any problem to really to create the change. And in that, definitely realized that I need to be in better health. I need to eat better to be able to perform in the ways that I want to perform. And so there was a lot of learning in that and it's taken time, but ultimately I will just say I have a way better diet, just slowly learning new things. Definitely more focused on eating a lot of red meat and like the classic Bitcoiner stereotype, but my brain
Yeah.
fog went away. And now I have a ton of energy and want to be working out and working on the business. So it was kind of just like a slow trial. Let me see how this feels. And I started feeling better and just kind of ran with it. So yeah, I mean, I think I've always kind of thought long term, and that's what attracted me to the wine business looking back. But I would get trapped in these short term moments of just rushing things, and then being in this low time preference business, having low time preference money, it just like showed that every time I would make a short term decision, like, and I kind of knew it in my gut that it was wrong, but I would say screw it and go for it. It wouldn't work out. And so I've learned to just be a lot more patient. And I've been forced to be more patient. I mean, buying the top of the Bitcoin market both times in 2021, thinking it's going up forever because I was new and just learning about it. And once you learn and understand Bitcoin and have that like, oh my God, that's what this is, it's baffling that it's not already at infinity. So you expect it to keep going up forever. And that was forcing, like, okay, yeah, I'm not just going to get rich on Bitcoin right now. And the winery, I've had so many things go wrong that it's like, it's not just going to happen right away. I have to be patient and build the right way. So, yeah, it's been a huge learning curve into learning how to think a little bit more long term. And I've been very, very happy for it. It's made my life a lot better.
So you bought both tops, and that was your entry into Bitcoin. That has to be rough. So
I did.
you had a lot of man. You had to get a lot of conviction quickly because most people don't have the balls or the conviction or the low time preference to see to write it down and then write it back up. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was really just the first one was just unfortunate because it was I had my ultimate conviction moment right as it was at the top and then a week and then made my conviction buy because I knew what Bitcoin was and then watched it go down. But luckily you have that conviction, and I specifically remember thinking as when it went to 28 that and I was down half of, I mean, I went all in, like pulled out
Yeah.
any excess money that I had to go all in, and had that moment of like, wow, this is the luckiest thing that's ever happened to me. Yeah, I wish I could have bought that later, but at the same time, like now I actually have a chance to keep buying because I was expecting to, watch it to go up forever and never get a chance to really stack much. I thought I'd missed it, and I didn't.
And in a way, screw you, but thank you, SBF. You know, in a way, it gave you
Yeah,
that.
totally.
Yeah, man.
I'm super thankful to have come in during the least parabolic of all the cycles.
Well, yet, right?
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
wait, are you a bear?
No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm playing. No, well, no, I'll be honest. I do believe that there is. I do believe somewhat in the diminishing
So you're a
returns.
bear.
Not a
Cool.
bear. No, gosh,
No,
I,
you're a
I,
bear, Tim.
I'm a bear.
That
uh,
makes you a bear.
is that really? Well, I also think
If you, in my
the.
mind, if you don't expect above 300,000, you're a bear, and if you don't expect
Oh, I do.
above, if you don't, yeah. So
I
you're
I, I
diminishing
think
returns.
I think I think those metrics, like for example, I'm going to talk out both sides of my mouth here. In
Hmm.
addition to that, I also believe like the power law, and I'm getting for those who are watching who are new to Bitcoin, we're getting deep down the rabbit hole here. But the power law kind of states that like Bitcoin's going to continue to go up over time. You know, that's log price and log time. But my thing is like with all of these models, one of the factors is the dollar. Is and
Hmm.
that is an unsure metric. It goes up wildly. It changes wildly. So how can we have an accurate representation of a model if one of the factors is not accurate or is always changing, right?
That's why
So,
my favorite model is stock to FOMO.
and for those of you who don't know, it's good. It's got that S curve and it flattens off and then it just takes off forever, right? But at that point, the dollar doesn't even matter. You can say
Well,
300,000.
yeah,
So,
exactly. So the beginning is about the monetization of Bitcoin. The middle is where it's kind of the dollar's dying, but Bitcoin's also growing and it's kind of in the middle, not growing as much. And then the second half, when it goes crazy, is the dollar dying.
yeah. So I'm all over the place.
Hmm.
I see value in a lot of different models. And to be honest, I was kind of like in what's his name? Stock to flows camp back then, way back when.
Hmm.
And if it's going to fail, fail the upside, right?
Hmm.
So, I don't know. We're kind of going down the rabbit hole a little bit. So, tell us more about Peony Lane.
Yeah,
You've started to branch out a lot. You got a lot of different types, a lot of different what's the word I'm looking for?
varieties.
Varieties. Thank you. Tell
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about what you got.
Yeah, so I make natural wine, so no additives in the wine, super minimal sulfites, and a wild fermentation. So I take the grapes from my vineyard, crush them, get them ready to um, get them ready to go, and then they start fermenting with the wild yeast that lives on them. And so that kind of brings in a more localized flavor that you can't get from anywhere else because it really is the wild yeast that grows here. And it says a lot about our farming practices too, in that if you're spraying glyphosate or a ton of chemicals in your vineyard, you're likely going to kill off a bunch of yeasts. And most yeast varieties don't produce alcohol, or they turn your wine into vinegar instead of wine. So this wild yeast that lives here has been thriving for a long time. My dad was making wine for 15 years with it, and it just makes really awesome wine. So that's kind of my secret sauce is the wild fermentation. But the natural wine is wine that, like I said, with no additives. And a lot of people will be like, oh, so like the wine I had in Italy or the wine I had in France. And it's yes, it's this old world winemaking style, a lot lower time preference in that you do have to farm well. And there's no necessarily guarantee that that yeast continues, but it does. And it's taking a little bit more risk, which is why you don't see it as common in large wineries because it's a bigger risk for them to take, and they have so much more land, so many more grapes that it's harder for them to do. So at my scale, I'm able to take that risk and create something a little bit more magical, a little bit closer to my space. But outside of the more unique flavors of natural wine, the biggest benefit is you don't get hungover from it. Yeah, sure, you can stay up late drinking and not feel as on top of it the next day because your sleep got disrupted. But the most beautiful thing is I had my birthday a few days ago and I drank a lot of wine. And I remember specifically thinking going to bed, like, wow, I haven't thought at all about being hungover tomorrow at all. And it's just not part of my life anymore, drinking this wine. So it's a pretty amazing relationship to have with alcohol that you drink it, yeah, not in excess. I mean, I'm drinking it with friends in great spots. It's a enhancer as opposed to a way to escape for me,
Sure.
but I don't get as much of the downside nearly at all. So I get
And
to
why is
enjoy it a
that?
ton more.
Why is that? Is the glyphosate? What specifically is that like technically?
The the poster child for it is sulfites. So sulfites
Okay.
are a preservative added to wine. They both kill the living organisms within the wine and protect it from oxygen. And there's natural sulfites that occur in all wine. I add a tiny bit right before bottling just to make sure it's shelf stable. But most wineries will just add a ton throughout the entire winemaking process.
Huh.
And that add up just builds up to a ton of sulfites. And a lot of people blame that for their headaches. I'd see it as the poster child in a way that there's like no ingredients list required on a wine label. So you can throw a ton of different stuff in. I mean, there's chemicals you can add that change the flavor, texture, taste, aromas, like everything. And that all adding up makes you feel like crap afterwards. And so American wine does tend to have more of that, but it's not a blanket statement and it's hard to know what's in your wine. It's a black box. So that's really, I see the wine industry as natural wine, a lot of European wines, kind of taking the long-term approach, doing things the right way. That's Bitcoin to me. And
Yeah.
then the rest of the wine industry, that is just a marketing. They just put some cool label on it. They don't really care about the contents of the wine. Oh yeah, no one even knows what's in wine. Like no one even cares how this tastes. Let's just put Snoop Dogg on this and people just get drunk. Like that's crypto to me. That's that short-term
That's
payoff.
fiat.
You're
All
drunk, you
right.
feel like crap afterwards. So it's also that black box. I mean, no one knows what's in wine. No one knows if wine's supposed to taste good, and so they can play with anyone. They can trick people pretty easily.
I never thought I never realized that. That kind of blows my mind. And yeah, it's very fiat of them to just change the label. I always go into I go into our local store and see, they just have the prices on the different rungs of the shelf, and it's like, how do I even know? Like, I can look on the
Hmm.
back and I can say, oh, it's got taste of blueberry, blah 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 blah. I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. And
Yeah.
you really don't have any clue. And you're absolutely right. Changing that label is a lot of it. Marketing is most of it for most of them.
Hmm.
I really like that. So you got this proof of work aspect also going on. You got the low time preference. I love this. So with Bitcoin, you're man, I'm still feeling that buying the top and now you're back. I kind of want to ask you about that aspect of it. That writing it down, obviously you got the conviction, writing it
Hmm.
back up. Did you have a lot of friends or family trying to talk you out of that at the time? Maybe people that may not have researched it as much.
Well, those people forgot about Bitcoin until it hit something newsworthy like its all-time high. So I didn't hear much from them when Bitcoin was riding back up. I mean, yeah, I was buying all the way down. I mean, basically the last time I bought Bitcoin was at when it hit the 16,000 or whatever it did at the bottom. I did one last buy there and then I was like, nope, I can't buy any more. If it had kept going down, I probably would have bought more, but I can't buy any more. I need to put every dollar I have into the wine business from here on out. The only way I'm getting Bitcoin is by selling wine. So that makes stacking sats super easy as far as like turning wine into Bitcoin. That's a no-brainer, you know. It's a little bit less on my balance sheet to worry about the numbers
So
in the short term. But
you can't sell the vines, but you can sell the chairs, right?
yeah, yeah. So yeah, no one. I mean, I've always been doubted, but for Bitcoin, I've had a few people figure it out and they have the conviction. And luckily, in my orange pilling understanding process, I was living with a Bitcoiner. So I've always had friends that are Bitcoiners around me to help me through the period of time where it was blowing my mind and I was going crazy. But yeah, I didn't have anyone tell me to sell. I didn't, I mean, my conviction was so strong, there was no point in even telling me. The only time I've been told to sell is um, when I was on the phone with my sister and she was like, what's Bitcoin at now? Like 40,000? And I told her 70. And she's like, oh my God, Ben, you have to sell.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
like,
that's
man, I'm not
a
going to take.
smart move, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
she says stock market's at all time high too, which is what she follows. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to sell after all this just
No.
as 70,000.
Right as it gets ready to just explode, right?
Hmm.
So in Colorado, so I don't know if you know this, I also co-host Lincoln Land Bitcoin Meetup here in Springfield, Illinois. We're in the middle of a
Nice.
cornfield, so I mean, but did you ever do any going to meetups? You have any good meetups around your area?
So I live in a town of 2,000 people, and I know all the Bitcoiners around. I guess there's maybe three or four hardcore Bitcoiners, and obviously working on all my friends and stuff, but we don't have any meetups. And I try and go to the one in Denver whenever I'm in town, which is really fun. This will have aired after this happens, but the Denver Halving Party should be a really good time. I get a lot of value out of meeting Bitcoiners, especially early on when I was still felt like I was going a little crazy and just needed more people to talk to about it. But also, I mean, if you're trying to meet new people and you're just picking from a random like group of people, I would say Bitcoiners are just an incredible group of people to grab from and learn from because a lot of people have been extremely humbled by Bitcoin and also been forced to take a low time preference approach to their life and build in super positive ways. So it's just a really awesome group of people to get to know compared to any other basket that you could like randomly draw from.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, you were telling me before we hit record that you just had something new happen with your business. Do you mind sharing that real quick?
Yeah, so on 420 on the halving, I'm releasing my Satoshi's Reserve bottle. So hopefully there are still some when this airs, but that's the first bottle that I've branded Bitcoin only. And I've had starting in the 2021 vintage, I put a Bitcoin B on all the logos or on all the labels. It's not prominent. It's on the back because I do sell to a lot of just normal people as well.
Well, you
But
accept
I
dollars
kind of
and Bitcoin.
yeah, I only accept one shitcoin. So the Bitcoin logo on my label is something that it's kind of just for me. I'm super proud of it, have it there, but it's also I want people to associate Bitcoin with positive things, like a positive wine experience or a small business that they respect and want to support, instead of the things that, especially during the last few years, we've seen negative connotations with SBF, with crime or money laundering stuff that people just want to throw on Bitcoin and it's not realistic. So I have it there to have someone normal person just looking at the label and be like, oh, huh, Bitcoin, and just be a touch point because it takes a lot of touch points to get someone to really want to dive into Bitcoin.
It does, and unfortunately, the more I see, I mean, because being an educator, having a meetup, writing a book, starting a you know educational Bitcoin channel, like the thing that I see is that pain is the best teacher, and I hate that. I mean,
Hmm.
it seems to be like the people in the living under authoritarian regimes. That's an easy sell. Bitcoin's an easy sell for them. Us here in America, where things are markedly better, but getting markedly worse over time,
Hmm.
people are going to start seeing that pain, and it's unfortunate. So you do have to reach out. You got to find those people. You got to find those local meetups before they'll learn the hard way. You know what I'm saying? I
Hmm.
don't know, but yeah, I find this interesting. I love what you got going on. I'm looking. God, my time preference. I hate my low time preference because I really want to break into this, but at the same time, I also want to hold off to the having party. And it's good to know now that I'm not going to have as big of a headache or not a headache at all. That just blows my mind. The
Yeah,
way,
I mean, like I said, I drink it all the time, and it kind of it doesn't blow my mind much anymore because I don't think about it all that much. But
sure,
what blew my mind was the fact that I don't even think about it and then every once in a while it pop
yeah.
into my head, and I'm like, oh right, yeah, I don't get hungover anymore.
Well, a quick question: you going to be in Nashville for the
I
Bitcoin meetup?
am hoping to be in Nashville for the conference. I've got a couple events that are possibilities. It's kind of got to be a work trip for me because I make most of my money in the summer selling wine at farmers markets.
I love that. I love that. Well, if there's any chance, I'd love to have a glass with you while we're there. But awesome. This has been a great conversation, Ben. Thank you for joining me on Zoom Out. I look forward to seeing your future success. I love everything you're doing. I like that you're doing doing the wine the right way. You know, we need more of that, and I love that you're spreading the message the right way as well. So, Ben Justman, thank you for joining me on Zoom Out.
Thank you, Tim. It's an honor to work with other Bitcoiners in any way to educate.
Yeah, man. Thanks. I'll talk to you soon.